High above the clouds, there was once a mountain where the gods watched the world below in silence. Olympus, crowned with golden mist, had echoed for ages with laughter, songs, and divine counsel. But now the halls were quieter, and the air held a weight of change that even gods could not ignore. Among them stood Zeus, the ruler of the skies, with eyes that carried both thunder and sorrow. In his hand rested a single thunderbolt, the last of its kind, gleaming with ancient light. It was not fire for battle, nor storm for fear, but a symbol of power waiting for a new purpose. Time had shifted, and mortals had grown stronger, daring to live without constant guidance. The gods felt this change, like the slow fading of a song remembered only in whispers. Zeus, once the voice of storms, wondered if his thunder was still needed in this fragile world. The winds carried questions, and the stars gave no answers. Only a patient silence above. So begins the tale of the last thunder of Zeus, not of war or fury, but of destiny and choice. The halls of Olympus stood tall, yet a stillness lingered that no feast or song could chase away. Marble columns gleamed in fading light, but their brilliance no longer spoke of endless triumphs. Echoes of past laughter drifted like fading smoke, vanishing before they reached the golden gates. The mountain had seen centuries of voices, but tonight it cradled only the silence of thought. Zeus, Lord of the sky, sat upon his throne, carved from clouds and lightning now dimmed. His eyes searched the horizon where the mortal world stretched, restless and alive beneath him. The air held the scent of change, like rain waiting behind distant hills, refusing to fall. Once he ruled with thunder, his voice carried in storms, his will etched into lightning strikes. But the thunder no longer roared for fear. It rested, patient, like a story unfinished. His hands, weathered by centuries of power, cradled a single thunderbolt, bright yet calm. It pulsed faintly, like the heartbeat of a creature deciding whether to wake or sleep. Around him, Olympus was quiet, the other gods distant, wrapped in their own contemplations. The feasts of old had waned, replaced by murmurs of endings and whispers of beginnings. Even immortal hearts could feel the weight of time, though they never marked its passing. The world below had shifted, no longer trembling at every rumble of the heavens. Mortals had grown braver, building ships to chase horizons, fires to banish shadows, words to guide. They looked less to Olympus and more to one another, weaving destiny with their own hands. Zeus watched, half proud, half uncertain, unsure if his place remained in their stories. His throne felt heavier, not from stone, but from questions no thunder could answer. The sky itself seemed to ask him, would the last thunder be given or be kept? A soft wind swept through the halls, carrying petals from distant orchards, fragrant and gentle. The fragrance reminded him of times when gods and mortals walked side by side. He remembered laughter in villages, offerings laid on altars, eyes lifted in hope. Now prayers were fewer, softer, scattered like embers fading at the end of night. Zeus did not resent them. He admired their courage, their will to stand without divine shelter. Yet admiration was twined with a quiet ache, a sense of distance he could not mend. He rose from his throne, his figure tall against the twilight sky that crowned Olympus. The last thunderbolt glimmered in his grasp, glowing faintly as if listening to his thoughts. He walked through the great hall, each step echoing, carrying him past statues of memory. Figures of heroes carved in marble lined the path, reminders of ages when thunder guided them. Their stone eyes stared outward, not at him, but at the horizon mortals now chased. He paused, feeling the silence press close, the weight of a choice still unspoken. The storm within him was not rage, but a question, soft as rain, yet heavy as fate. Could a god release what defined him, and still remain more than shadow and memory? Zeus lifted the thunderbolt, watching it flicker with light like dawn breaking in his palm. It did not demand. It simply waited, as if it knew that even power must rest. The sky darkened, clouds gathering, not from command but from the mountain's own breath. Lightning threaded across the distance, a quiet rehearsal of what might yet be unleashed. Yet no strike fell, no roar followed, only the hush of waiting skies around him. The mountain seemed to listen, the stones leaning close as though sharing his burden. Zeus spoke softly, though no ear but Olympus could hear. The world no longer trembles. His words hung in the air, heavy yet tender, a truth too vast for thunder alone. In that quiet, the last thunder slept in his hand, dreaming of the purpose yet to come. The thunderbolt rested in his palm, silent yet alive, its glow steady like a flame, refusing to fade. It was the last of its kind, not forged in war, but carried through centuries as a mark of his reign. Zeus studied its light, soft against his skin, yet filled with echoes of storms once feared by kings. Every strike that once tore through skies was remembered here, folded into its glowing heart. But now it trembled with a quieter energy, like a song shifting from thunderous chorus to whisper. He turned it slowly, watching how light bent, forming patterns like rivers flowing through the clouds. The bolt no longer threatened destruction. It sought instead a new meaning beyond fear and awe. Zeus felt this as surely as he felt the pulse of the heavens, subtle but undeniable. Once, it was a tool of command, bending mortals and even gods to his unyielding will. Now it pulsed as if asking him a question. Am I still yours, or do I belong elsewhere? The silence of Olympus deepened, as though every stone waited for his answer. The wind sighed across the mountain, carrying the scent of pine and distant seas. Zeus closed his eyes and remembered a time when his thunder was welcomed as protection. Villages prayed for rain, and his strike brought harvests, life springing from dry and broken earth. Sailors looked to the sky, and his light guided them safely to distant shores. In those days, thunder was both shield and guide, a beacon wrapped in storm and flame. But memory shifted, and darker echoes returned. Thunder feared storms that broke rather than healed. He opened his eyes, seeing both truths reflected in the trembling light of the bolt. It was not simply power, it was choice, the shape of what he had been and might yet be. The thunderbolt seemed to breathe, not with anger, but with expectation, awaiting its destiny. Zeus spoke softly, his voice heavy yet tender. What are you now, my last companion of storms? The bolt flickered, a thread of light weaving across its surface like a heartbeat answering. It was not a reply in words, but in presence, a reminder that even power carries memory. Zeus rose, stepping into the open air, the sky stretching wide and restless above him. Clouds gathered instinctively, drawn to their master, but they held their rein as if listening. He lifted the thunderbolt high, its glow touching the clouds, staining them gold at their edges. The heavens stirred, not in rage, but in wonder, like children seeing a father after long absence. He felt the mountain beneath his feet, solid and eternal, yet aware of shifting tides. The bolt's light reached farther, spilling over valleys, rivers, and the sleeping mortal lands below. It touched their rooftops, their fields, their seas, without striking, without harm. Instead, it lingered like dawn, quiet, gentle, asking not to be feared but to be trusted. Zeus lowered his arm, the bolt humming as though reluctant to rest again. His thoughts turned inward. Could he release it, and in doing so, release himself? Would the skies remain whole if their thunder no longer belonged to his command? The weight in his hand was no longer heavy with violence, but with possibility. Possibility for mortals, for gods, for the fragile bond that held them both in one universe. He whispered, "Perhaps you are not mine to keep, but mine to give." The bolt glowed brighter, as if those words had freed something long hidden within. The ground did not shake, nor did the skies roar. Instead, a calm spread across Olympus. It was as though the mountain exhaled, relieved that its lord had spoken the truth aloud. Zeus cradled the thunderbolt close, not as a weapon, but as a child carried with care. The silence was no longer heavy. It was patient, waiting for what would come next. In that silence, Zeus knew the last thunder was no longer an end, but the beginning of choice. Night deepened around Olympus, and the stars spread like silver dust across a quiet canvas of sky. The air grew colder, and with it came a whisper, soft as silk yet heavy with ancient authority. From the shadows emerged three figures, woven in gray robes, their presence older than gods themselves. They were the Moirai, the Fates, guardians of the threads that bind every life, even divine. Clotho, with her spindle, carried the hum of beginnings, threads bright as morning light. Lachesis held the staff, measuring lengths of days and choices with patient, unwavering calm. Atropos bore the shears, silent but resolute, a reminder that every path must one day close. Zeus did not rise in defiance, for even he bowed to the mystery of their weaving. The thunderbolt in his hand flickered, its glow bending as though it recognized its place in their design. Clotho's voice, gentle yet unyielding, spoke first. Every spark is born, even lightning, and must find an end. Lachesis stepped forward, her eyes reflecting the light of countless ages. Yet ends can be beginnings. Atropos did not speak, but the quiet weight of her gaze carried a truth beyond words. Zeus lowered his head. The Sky Lord humbled, as the air around them shimmered with woven threads. He saw destinies twisting, mortal and divine, intersecting like rivers that flowed toward unseen seas. The thunderbolt pulsed in rhythm with those threads, as though asking where it belonged among them. Clotho touched the glowing bolt lightly, and sparks danced across her fingers like playful fireflies. "It is not fire alone," she whispered. "It is memory, choice, and the promise of renewal." Zeus felt the truth in her words, a weight lifted yet replaced with a different burden. Lachesis raised her staff, pointing to the mortal world far below the clouds of Olympus. "Mortals no longer need fear," she said, "but they still need light, a guide, a spark of hope." The thunderbolt glowed brighter, echoing her words, shimmering like dawn spreading across unseen hills. Atropos finally stepped near, her shears glinting like stars carved from silence. She did not cut. Instead, she placed her hand over Zeus's, steady and final. Her voice was a whisper of inevitability. "It will leave you, as all things must." Zeus's chest tightened, not with anger, but with the ache of letting go. He looked down at the bolt, his last thunder, and saw in it not loss, but possibility. The Moirai moved together, their forms shifting like mist, as if woven from the night itself. They circled him slowly, their presence weaving calm into the trembling air. The mountain seemed to hold its breath, listening to the chorus of destiny unfolding in silence. Clotho sang softly, her voice like a cradle song. "What begins, begins again." Lachesis joined, her tone deeper, a balance of measure and promise. "What ends becomes another path." Atropos's voice followed, quiet as twilight. "And every choice shapes the world that waits." Their voices wove together, not commands but guidance, not orders but invitations to release. Zeus lifted his gaze, his eyes reflecting both the stars above and the earth below. He understood then. The thunderbolt was never meant to vanish, only to change hands. The Fates stepped back, their work finished, their song fading into the stillness of the night. Zeus stood alone again, yet not alone, for their presence lingered in the air like perfume. The bolt in his hand no longer hummed with possession but with readiness. It was not asking to stay or to leave, it was asking to become something more. Zeus whispered into the silence, "Then let it be as the threads desire." The thunderbolt flared once, bright and clear, as if answering with its own vow. Above him, the stars seemed closer, watching with patient eyes, as though blessing the choice. The night softened, the silence deepened, and the Fates vanished into the fabric of destiny. Zeus remained upon Olympus, his hands still warm with their touch, his heart steadier than before. And so, the last thunder did not mark an ending, but the opening of a door yet unseen. The morning sun rose over Olympus, spilling gold across marble and waking the halls from their silence. Zeus stood at the edge of the mountain, the thunderbolt warm in his hand, glowing with quiet intent. The night's vision of the Fates lingered, their whispers folded into his thoughts like threads of truth. He felt lighter, yet burdened, as though wisdom had been given, but choices still weighed heavily. A sound stirred behind him, measured steady steps echoing with grace across the stone floor. It was Athena, radiant in silver light, her eyes calm, carrying both wisdom and compassion. She approached without haste, her presence bringing balance to the restless energy of the skies. "Father," she said softly, her voice like still water, "you carry a storm in silence." Zeus turned to her, his expression heavy, the thunderbolt gleaming faintly between his fingers. "It is my last," he admitted. "The fates have spoken, and even thunder must find its place." Athena studied the bolt, her gaze thoughtful, not of fear, but of understanding. "It has been feared," she said, "but it has also been loved when wielded with care." Her words carried the weight of centuries, drawn from battles of mind and heart, not only war. She stepped closer, her hand brushing the air near the thunderbolt but never touching. "I see, not a weapon," she continued. "I see a flame, waiting for a vessel to guard it." Zeus listened, the words pressing gently against his doubts, carving clarity where shadows lingered. "The world changes," Athena said, her voice steady. "Mortals rise with courage, even without thunder." She paused, her gaze drifting to the earth below, where villages stirred in morning light. "They do not need fear to guide them," she continued. "They need wisdom, light, and protection." The thunderbolt flickered brighter, as if it, too, longed for a new form of purpose. Athena's eyes returned to her father, calm, yet unyielding, steady as the roots of the earth. "Let it be a gift," she urged, "not of power to command, but of hope to endure." Zeus's chest tightened, for her counsel rang true, yet the ache of parting weighed upon him. He spoke slowly, his voice deep as rolling clouds. "To release it is to release myself." Athena's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile, touched with both pride and sorrow. "Perhaps," she said, "but in release you may find the truest form of yourself." Her words echoed in the hall, not as command, but as invitation, leaving space for his choice. The mountain air stirred, carrying the faint cry of an eagle soaring high above. Zeus lifted his gaze, watching the bird carve the sky, free yet bound to the winds. Athena's hand came to rest on his arm, steady and reassuring. "You are not diminished by giving," she whispered. "You are fulfilled." Silence followed, but it was a silence filled with strength, not the hollow kind of loss. The thunderbolt glowed steady, no longer restless, its light soft but unwavering. It seemed to listen as Athena spoke, as though recognizing the wisdom in her counsel. Zeus looked again at his daughter, her face serene, her presence a mirror of clarity. "You speak with the wisdom of ages," he said. "Perhaps the thunder belongs not to me, but to time." Athena bowed her head slightly, her eyes shining with quiet pride. "Then let time carry it," she answered, "and let mortals find strength in its light, not its fear." Zeus lowered the bolt, holding it close as if memorizing its weight one final time. The mountain wind circled him, cool and tender, like the world itself waiting for his answer. Athena stepped back, giving space, her figure framed in the morning glow. Her silence spoke of trust, faith that her father would choose as destiny required. Zeus breathed deeply, the air filling him with both memory and resolve. In that breath, he felt the shift, the moment where endings bend into beginnings. The last thunder hummed in his palm, steady as a heart, ready to be passed on. And Zeus, guided by wisdom not of storm but of love, began to understand its path. The day stretched long across Olympus, the air warm with sunlight and the quiet hum of unseen winds. Zeus remained near the mountain's edge, the thunderbolt resting in his hand, a beacon of ancient power. His thoughts moved like clouds, shifting between certainty and doubt, pulled by memory and by change. Behind him, the soft sound of steps echoed, lighter than Athena's, carrying a different rhythm of presence. It was Hermes, swift-footed and bright-eyed, his cloak shimmering like woven dawn and dusk together. He approached with a smile that carried ease, but his gaze revealed questions not yet spoken. "Father," Hermes began, his tone gentle yet curious, "you look as though the sky weighs heavy." Zeus turned slowly, the bolt glowing faintly, its light reflected in Hermes's sharp, clever eyes. The thunder, Zeus said. Once my voice across the world, now waits for a place beyond my hand. Hermes tilted his head, the expression thoughtful, his lips curling with the beginnings of a smile. Thunder has always been more than noise, he replied. It is a promise that skies still listen. The words lingered, light yet carrying the depth of one who walks between gods and mortals. Hermes stepped closer, his eyes bright with mischief but softened by the weight of understanding. I've seen mortals look to the sky, he said. Not with fear alone, but with hope for guidance. Zeus lowered his gaze, watching the faint sparks run across the bolt like rivers of living light. And yet, he murmured, to pass it on is to step away from what I have always been. Hermes let silence stretch before answering, his voice calm but edged with truth. You are not only thunder, Father. You are the sky itself, vast, endless, never diminished. The words struck Zeus, not with force, but with clarity, peeling away the fog of doubt. Hermes' tone grew lighter, almost playful, as if to soften the weight of his counsel. If thunder must find a new bearer, he said, then let it be given, not lost. Zeus's hand tightened slightly around the bolt, its hum steady, like a heart waiting to be heard. Hermes' eyes glimmered with curiosity as he leaned closer, speaking with the candor of youth. Have you thought, he asked, that perhaps thunder is not meant for gods at all anymore? The question hung between them, daring yet tender, as the mountain winds stirred the silence. Zeus raised his brow, his voice deep and measured. You would give thunder to mortals? Hermes smiled, the kind that held no mockery, only the spark of possibility. Mortals dream fiercely, he said. They stumble, they rise, but they carry fire in their spirit. Zeus's eyes drifted downward, watching the villages below, where smoke curled gently from small hearths. He imagined a mortal hand carrying the thunder, not as a weapon, but as a torch. The vision stirred him, both fearful and hopeful, a bridge between endings and beginnings. Hermes' voice broke softly through the thought, like wind weaving through tall grass. Thunder is not diminished by passing on, he said. It becomes eternal, echoed in new hearts. Zeus felt the truth in those words, though part of him clung to the weight of memory. He turned fully toward Hermes, searching his son's face for both wisdom and folly. You would entrust what has shaped ages to those bound by time? He asked. Hermes met his gaze without flinching, his eyes alight with courage disguised as mischief. Yes, he said simply, because it is time that teaches meaning more than eternity ever could. The mountain air grew still, as though the world itself listened for Zeus's reply. The thunderbolt pulsed once, bright and gentle, as though agreeing with the words spoken aloud. Zeus's heart swelled with both grief and pride, torn between holding on and letting go. Hermes placed a hand lightly on his father's arm, his touch warm, steady, and alive. Whatever choice you make, he said softly, the sky will still be yours. The thunder only waits. The words eased something within Zeus, loosening the grip of fear that had shadowed him. He lifted the bolt once more, its light spilling across Olympus, warm as morning fire. For the first time, he wondered not of loss, but of what new stories the thunder might write. And so, with Hermes by his side, the thought of parting no longer felt like ending. It felt like the slow turning of the heavens, where one star fades so another may rise. The evening sun slid low across the sky, painting Olympus in amber and long drifting shadows of gold. Zeus stood alone in the courtyard, the thunderbolt glowing faintly, like a star refusing to fade. He had listened to wisdom, to the voices of Athena and Hermes, but still the choice remained. His heart stirred with both longing and fear, torn between holding and releasing what defined him. The marble beneath his feet seemed to hum, as though the mountain itself shared in his unease. Then came another presence, quieter than the rest, soft as twilight's breath across the horizon. It was Hestia, goddess of the hearth, whose flame had never dimmed, gentle and eternal. She carried no weapon, no armor, only warmth and the steady calm of a guiding fire. Brother, she said softly, her voice low and kind, You carry a burden heavy, yet full of light. Zeus turned, meeting her gaze, which glowed with patience as old as the world itself. The thunder waits, he replied. And I wait with it, unsure if release is wisdom or loss. Hestia stepped closer, her hands folded, her presence filling the air with a quiet peace. You see it as an end, she said. But perhaps it is only a turning flame. Her eyes fell upon the thunderbolt, flickering in Zeus's grip like lightning caught in stillness. Fire passes, she continued, from one hand to another, never ending, only transforming. Zeus listened, her words wrapping around him like warmth against the mountain chill. Do you believe, he asked, that mortals could bear the weight of this thunder? Hestia smiled faintly, her face kind, her voice calm. I believe they already bear fire within. She motioned to the villages below, where tiny sparks of life glowed in homes and fires. They build, they dream, they endure, she whispered. What is thunder, if not a flame magnified? The thought stirred Zeus's soul, bridging his fear with a new, tender vision of possibility. The bolt pulsed gently, as though stirred by her words, its light softening in his palm. Hestia placed her hand lightly above the bolt, not touching, but sharing its warmth. It is not yours to keep forever, she said. It is yours to guide to its next place. Her words rang with truth, quiet yet unshakable, like embers glowing beneath ash. Zeus's chest ached, not with sorrow alone, but with the fragile beauty of letting go. He looked again at the villages below, where smoke curled like prayers into the cooling air. The thunder had once been his voice of power, but perhaps now it could be a voice of hope. Flame shared is not flame lost, Hestia said. It becomes brighter, reaching where you cannot go. The marble courtyard held their silence, a silence rich with meaning, not emptiness. Zeus closed his eyes, breathing deep, feeling the thunder hum like a heart beside his own. When he opened them, the world seemed sharper, filled with both grief and grace. Hestia, he said, his voice deep and low. Your words turned storm into light. She bowed her head slightly, her presence steady, unshaken by grandeur or sorrow. I am flame, she replied gently. I remind the gods and mortals that warmth must be shared. Zeus's grip loosened on the bolt, though he did not release it. Not yet. The evening sky stretched wide, painted in hues of violet, fire, and fading Sunday. He felt time's current pulling him forward, urging him toward the moment of release. But still, the weight lingered, the ache of a god facing the twilight of thunder. Hestia turned to leave, her steps light, her voice drifting softly into the cooling air. When the moment comes, she said, remember, flame passed on is never extinguished. Her words trailed like embers into the dusk, leaving Zeus alone once more. Yet in that solitude, the bolt in his hand felt less like a chain and more like a promise. The mountain wind shifted, carrying warmth from unseen fires, carrying voices of mortals rising. And Zeus, standing between storm and silence, began to believe the thunder might endure beyond him. Night fell over Olympus, the stars unfolding like a tapestry stretched across the endless dome of sky. Zeus lingered in the silence, the thunderbolt faintly glowing, softer than fire, steadier than storm. The words of Athena, Hermes, and Hestia echoed within him, weaving counsel into his restless heart. But one voice still lingered in memory, unspoken yet felt, the voice of Hera, his queen. She came quietly, her steps regal, her presence commanding without effort, the air shifting as she neared. Her eyes held strength and sorrow, reflecting both storms weathered and love tempered by time. Zeus, she said, her tone calm, yet edged with something deeper. You have walked heavy in thought. He turned, studying her face, which bore no fear of thunder, only the weight of truth. The bolt trembles, he replied. It waits for an answer, and I fear both giving and keeping. Hera's gaze fell upon the thunderbolt, her expression unreadable, shaped by centuries of knowing him. You see it as power, she said, but I see it as burden, carried too long, alone. Zeus frowned, his hand tightening on the glowing shaft, the hum deepening in response. I bore it because it was mine, he said. My voice, my command, my bond with the world. Hera stepped closer, her presence steady, her voice unyielding. And what does it cost you, husband? To hold thunder while the years drift quietly below? Her words struck not as accusation, but as truth sharpened by love and memory. Zeus's breath slowed, his chest heavy with the weight of centuries locked within the bolt. I feared, he confessed, that without thunder, I would be less than Zeus, less than king. Hera's hand reached, not for the bolt, but for his hand, steadying him in silence. You are not thunder, she whispered. You are the sky, the father, the ruler who binds us still. The thunderbolt flickered, dimming slightly, as though humbled by her words of truth. Hera's eyes softened, though her tone remained strong, as was always her way. Release it, she urged. Not for loss, but for freedom, for you, and for the world below. Zeus closed his eyes, the hum of the bolt resonating with his pulse, neither yielding nor raging. Her hand in his steadied the storm within, anchoring him against the tide of doubt. He opened his eyes, meeting her gaze, where love and defiance burned in equal measure. Hera, he said, his voice deep, you have stood beside me through every storm. She inclined her head slightly, a quiet acknowledgement of trials endured and battles unseen. Then hear me now, she said. The storm must pass, so the earth may bloom again. Her words lingered, pressing into his heart like roots anchoring into soil, long unsettled. Zeus lifted the bolt, its glow faint, its hum softer than ever before. He saw not a weapon, but a relic, waiting to become something greater than thunder. Hera's gaze did not leave him, her strength unshaken, her trust complete. You are Zeus, she said, firm and sure. Thunder does not define you, it only follows. The silence that followed was vast, filled with stars, with breath, with the turning of time. Zeus lowered the bolt slowly, his grip loosening, though not yet ready to release. But within his heart, something shifted, like the breaking of dawn across darkened skies. Hera pressed his hand gently, her voice a final whisper into the night. When you let go, it will not be the end. It will be the beginning. The stars shimmered brighter, as if listening, as if waiting for the god of thunder to choose. And Zeus, standing between power and peace, felt the last chains of fear begin to break. The thunderbolt glowed steady, its light no longer storm, but quiet, eternal flame. And for the first time, Zeus believed he could release it and still remain whole. The dawn came slowly, brushing Olympus with pale gold, soft and hesitant, as if unsure of its welcome. Zeus stood where night had left him, the thunderbolt glowing faintly, his hand still reluctant to release. The air carried the fragrance of earth below, fields stirring awake, rivers gleaming beneath first light. He felt the world breathing, no longer trembling at storms, but thriving in its own quiet rhythm. Hera's words lingered in him, anchoring his heart as the sky brightened with gentle certainty. He whispered to himself, if I let go, will the world still remember thunder? The wind moved through the high columns, answering with silence. Not denial, not comfort, only truth. Then came Apollo, radiant, his steps trailing light, his lyre slung carelessly at his side. Father, he said, his voice like morning, why hold thunder when the world already sings without it? Zeus looked upon him, this son of light, who bore no fear of shadow. Apollo smiled, lifting his lyre, strumming a note that lingered like a sunrise caught in sound. Listen, he said. The mortals sing now. Their voices reach the heavens without fear of storm. The note shimmered, carrying echoes of hymns, laughter, and prayers spoken from fields and hearths. Zeus's grip trembled, the bolt pulsing faintly, almost eager to dissolve into morning air. You would have me surrender what made me king, Zeus said, his voice steady yet strained. Apollo shook his head, his golden eyes calm, reflecting light, not borrowed but born within. No, father, it is not surrender. It is gift. A king who releases creates more than one who clings. The words struck deep, stirring something long dormant, a truth buried beneath centuries of command. Zeus turned away, staring into the horizon where mountains rose like guardians of the world below. He remembered when thunder was feared, when storms bent forests, when mortals prayed for mercy. Now he saw fields thriving, cities shining, voices rising strong without trembling. Perhaps Apollo was right. Thunder had been needed. But maybe now its silence was the greater gift. Artemis soon followed, her step silent, her eyes bright with the calm of endless night. She looked at her father, her words soft but sure. Even hunters know when to release the bow. Zeus studied her, the goddess who roamed forests, fierce yet tender in her solitude. She touched the thunderbolt lightly, her fingers tracing its light, not claiming, only acknowledging. "It is heavy," she said. "Too heavy for one heart to carry alone. Let the earth breathe free." The bolt dimmed again, its hum fading like a storm that knows its time has passed. Apollo and Artemis stood together, light and night, waiting, not demanding, only offering truth. Zeus's heart wavered, torn between memory of storms and the quiet promise of peace. He lifted the bolt once more, its glow pale in the dawn, no longer fierce but weary. "I was thunder," he whispered, "but perhaps I must learn to be silence." The sky stretched wide, a canvas unbroken by storm, welcoming the choice that lingered. Hera's words, Apollo's melody, Artemis's calm all converged, weaving a chorus of release. Zeus closed his eyes, his hand loosening further, the bolt trembling like a flame in wind. He saw mortals laughing, singing, building, thriving in a world no longer chained to storm. And he wondered, perhaps for the first time, if thunder had been meant only for a season. The dawn rose higher, light spilling into every corner of Olympus, every shadow lifting. The thunderbolt flickered once, as though bowing, as though waiting for its final breath. And Zeus, surrounded by gods and silence, felt the choice tighten, urgent yet freeing. He drew one deep breath, steady as the horizon, vast as the sky itself. And in that breath, he knew the time of thunder was nearly at its end. The sky stretched vast, endless blue, as if waiting for Zeus to speak his last word of thunder. He stood tall upon Olympus, the thunderbolt faint in his grasp, its glow softer than morning dew. The gods had gathered now, not summoned, but drawn by the silence that trembled through the air. Poseidon came, his trident gleaming, eyes deep as oceans that had seen storms and calm alike. He looked at his brother and said, "Even the sea rests between waves. Let thunder rest as well." Demeter followed, her hair woven with wheat and vine, her hands stained with the work of growth. She touched Zeus's arm gently. "Release it, brother. Let the fields thrive without fear of ruin." Hephaestus limped forward, fire dim upon his hands, yet steady with the strength of creation. "Storm destroys," he said, "but flame builds. Give the world your spark, not your storm." Zeus listened, each word a weight added to the balance within his heart. The thunderbolt pulsed weakly, like a dying star refusing to fade before its final glow. Then came Dionysus, laughter in his step, eyes alight with mischief and sorrow entwined. "Father," he said, "life is too sweet to be drowned in thunder. Let mortals drink joy, not fear." The air thickened with voices, a chorus of truth rising from those who knew him best. Each god spoke not of weakness, but of freedom, urging him toward the choice waiting before him. Zeus lifted the bolt higher, its hum shaking faintly, like the echo of storms long past. He looked out at the world below, fields bright, seas calm, cities alive with mortal dreams. "Have I been king?" he asked aloud, "or prisoner of the storm I carried?" The gods were silent, their gazes steady, letting the question settle into his soul. Zeus's hand trembled, not from weakness, but from the weight of letting go after eternity. The bolt flickered again, its light bending, ready to vanish into the air like mist. Athena stepped forward once more, her eyes bright with wisdom born of patience and war. "You are not less without thunder," she said. "You are more because you choose peace." Her words struck like lightning, but not in fury, gentle, clear, piercing through the fog of doubt. Zeus's breath deepened, filling his chest with the calm of the open sky. He looked at his children, his siblings, his queen, all gathered in quiet reverence. For the first time, he saw not subjects, but companions, bound by more than his thunder. The thunderbolt dimmed further, its hum now a whisper, waiting for his final decision. Zeus raised it once more, holding it high where sunlight caught its fading glow. "This thunder," he declared, his voice steady, "is not an end, but a gift returned to the world." The gods bowed their heads, not in mourning, but in respect for the courage of release. The bolt shimmered, cracked softly with light, and began to dissolve into the sky above. Its glow spread outward, turning into threads of brilliance that wove themselves into dawn. The earth stirred below, fields blooming brighter, seas glistening deeper, hearts lifting in unseen joy. Zeus opened his hand fully, and the last thunder of Olympus scattered into endless light. There was no storm, no roar, only silence vast and pure, filled with promise. The gods watched as the sky absorbed the last spark, leaving only warmth behind. And in that silence, Zeus felt no loss, only the vast freedom of the open sky. The thunder had ended, but the world had begun anew. The silence after thunder stretched wide, filling Olympus with a peace no storm had ever left behind. Zeus lowered his hand, now empty, fingers open to the wind that rushed gently past. For the first time, he felt no weight pressing, no hum of power chaining him to the skies. The gods stood still, each carrying the moment as if it were a jewel forged by eternity. Hera approached, her eyes soft, her hand finding his with quiet strength. "You are free," she said, "not as comfort, but as truth carved deep in stone." Zeus breathed in, and the air was light, carrying scents of earth, sea, and fire. The world below stirred, unaware of the thunder's final rest, yet somehow brighter in spirit. Apollo strummed his lyre, notes rising gently, weaving melody where thunder once ruled. Artemis lifted her bow skyward, honoring the silence as if it were a sacred hunt completed. Poseidon struck his trident upon the ground, waves rising not in fury, but in rhythm with life. Demeter scattered seeds across the marble floor, vines curling as if touched by dawn. Dionysus laughed, his joy unshackled, wine spilling like rivers of celebration. Athena watched in stillness, wisdom etched in her gaze, knowing balance had been restored. Zeus looked upon them all, not as a king above, but as a brother, a father, a companion. The thunder was gone, but in its place remained something greater: unity, trust, and renewal. He raised his voice, calm and steady, no longer booming, but resonant with quiet authority. "My reign was thunder," he said, "but let my legacy be peace, so the world may thrive." The words carried, soft yet unyielding, spreading through Olympus like the warmth of fire. The gods bowed their heads, not in submission, but in reverence for the choice he had made. The sky above shimmered, no storm clouds forming, only light cascading like silver rain. Mortals below lifted their faces to the sun, feeling warmth they could not name. Children laughed, fields flourished, sailors sailed without dread of sudden fury. Life went on, richer, freer, untouched by thunder, yet blessed by its memory. Zeus turned to Hera, his heart lighter than in all his centuries of rule. "Will they remember me?" he asked, his voice bare of pride, only filled with wonder. She smiled faintly, her hand brushing his. "They will remember not the storm, but the sky." The word settled in him, soothing as rivers that run endlessly, never asking to be noticed. Zeus stepped away from the throne, its marble cold, its gold untarnished yet empty of meaning. He looked one last time at the high halls of Olympus, echoing with stories of storm and glory. Then he walked into the light, not vanishing, but blending into the vast sky itself. No longer a king of thunder, but the endless horizon, eternal, quiet, and free. The gods watched him go, and none called after him, for they knew his journey was complete. The world turned, the seasons shifted, and no thunder split the skies again. Yet sometimes, in the distance, mortals swore they heard a soft echo, not of storm, but of song. It was not fear, not warning, but blessing, a reminder of the god who chose peace. And so the tale of Zeus's last thunder was carried not by storms, but by whispers and stars. The skies remained wide and open, filled not with lightning, but with infinite promise. Olympus thrived, the gods closer than before, their bonds deepened by the silence of thunder, and mortals lived with courage, guided not by fear of storm, but by trust in their own hands. Thus ended the reign of thunder, and thus began an age where silence spoke louder than storms. The last thunder of Zeus was not destruction, but creation, the birth of a gentler eternity.